Hey, live from a occupied nation's capital, it's 56th day of occupation. Instead of totally opening in the war room, we're going to go to War Room Mobile. Raheem Kassam, our co-host. Raheem, can you hear us from the nation's capital?
I've got you loud and clear, Steve.
So we're going to have a cold open that had Stephanie Rule and Mika today in full meltdown. We had a couple of technical problems. They're in full meltdown today about the Capitol. The House of Representatives have left the Capitol. The leadership in the House has left the Capitol. Because of this, they're saying that because this was they have all the type of intelligence chatter that since this was the original inauguration day back before the Great Depression and FDR, that all these groups, all these domestic terrorist groups are planning on storming the Capitol today. You're at the Capitol. Give us a live report on the 56th day of occupation.
Well, Steve, I've yet to see any of these groups out here ready to storm the Capitol. It is, as you say, the 56th day of the occupation here. And you can see behind me the fencing that's been erected. This is a block more towards us, more east than the Capitol. See all of the fencing, all of the razor wire here. You have the National Guard standing right there. And it does seem to me, and I've been walking around this area nonstop the last 2 months looking at what's been going on here, it does seem to me like there is a higher number of National Guard people out here, servicemen out here manning the stations. Every couple of yards you have a group of them out here. But as you can see, it's completely quiet, it's completely silent. There is now more and more signs going up across the Capitol Hill neighborhood which point people to that petition that we talked about yesterday, the don'tfencethecapital.com, and I think it's got 27,000 signatures on that now. That should really be at about 1 million signatures. You would expect people to be able to contribute to the idea that the Capitol shouldn't be locked down and shouldn't be behind razor wire and fencing. The other part of this, of course, is the treatment of the National Guard out here. We've seen them treated perhaps in some of the most heinous conditions that you would ever expect your servicemen and women to be treated. Raw meat, metal shavings in their food, slept in garages, slept on the marble floors. And we're yet to hear explanations from authorities on Capitol Hill about why precisely these members of the National Guard still have to be here. We haven't heard the actual details of the intelligence. We've heard little nuggets. Oh, we're expecting 50,000 people. I don't know if we can turn the camera around here. My cameraman, there's not 50,000 people the other way either. I just want to make that very clear. And there's not 50,000 people behind me. In fact, there are no people here that the authorities claim to be here as the rationale for keeping the National Guard here, Steve. And so the point being, if this day passes without incident, will they tear down these walls?
I think, but let me step back for a second. For our radio audience and the John Friedrich Radio Network, and particularly our new audience down in Atlanta, Georgia on WMLB AM 1690 in Metro Atlanta, and of course everybody on the podcast, which now has well over 38 million downloads. They can't see this visually like our streaming audience on Real America's Voice, the TV audience up on Dish and cable, all of that. You have to understand, this came from, we have not gotten the intelligence, but first off, Raheem, we never got the intelligence reports, and correct me if I'm wrong, on why we have the National Guard here today, fully up-armored and armed, 5,000 to 7,000 troops. Why do we have the official barricade and the fencing and the razor wire? But now they've raised it up. And I think in McCarthy, in these people, I don't see the demands by Mitch McConnell and McCarthy. And quite frankly, if the House is running away and the Senate's still there, what is the intelligence, more than intelligence chatter? This is a smearing of the American people. They're talking about some crazy thing about March 4th still being the inauguration day and Donald Trump's going to be inaugurated. Those are all lies, and that's all smear and all spin. So I like your analysis, because you've been following this closely, and also about Biden. I think this is a misdirection play, because you're the first one. What are we, day 43 or 44 without an unaccompanied press conference? They're now, even the Democrats are starting to get on Biden because they cut him off last night on the live chat of this question and answer. They cut it off immediately. Obviously, he was not prepared to take questions. He's not in mental shape to take questions. They cut it off, right? And now they're getting pressure of why there's not been a joint session, the traditional State of the Union for the first term. So I want to go back. What evidence have they put forward on Capitol Hill? It's quiet. What evidence they put forward for them to leave their post and to run out of town and to say, oh, this is because there's a major terror threat, particularly when the reporting's out now, there's only 5 members of everybody they've rounded up, only 5 members, I think, they're associated with any group like the Proud Boys or like these other groups, Oath Keepers, that they're blaming for January 6th, right? There's only 5 of the 100 and so that I think they've pressed charges on that have any association whatsoever with terror groups. The rest of them are just individuals that came to across from the country. Mr. Raheem Kassam.
Yeah, that's right. Steve, there's a lot there. Let me start by saying that the original rationale was, of course, the inauguration. And they said, hey, we've got to have an ultra-secure inauguration. And they introduced all of these ridiculous security measures to really have a non-inauguration, right? Barely anybody there. The pictures still remain haunting to this day, and I think they'll remain haunting throughout history of what we saw over on the other side of this building on Inauguration Day. There hasn't been the rationale post-inauguration for this. Nobody can get any serious answers. And you're right to mention that the Republican Party, the Republican representatives, are actually mostly silent on this. There are a few here and there that are putting out statements. We see press releases being put out. But honestly, I mean, if this were the other way around and there was a Republican in the White House and a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate, and this was taking place, these streets would be filled with Democrats and Democrat representatives and residents of Washington, D.C., declaring, tear down this wall. You're not seeing any of that from the Republican side. It sort of just goes back to the constant theme of fecklessness, of laziness, of lack of consideration, lack of concern for ordinary people and what they care about. The people of the United States of America do not want to see their capital caged like this, and they certainly don't want to see their representatives running away from their business. Remember, we are still in a position 43 days since the inauguration that there have been $2 checks, and there are never going to be any $2,000 checks. We're still in a situation where there are lockdowns all over the place. Of course, there are Republican governors like Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis who are trying to get people out of that. But the country remains locked down, and the Capitol remains locked down, and Republican representatives are all too happy to get out of town.
I'm going to play. We've now have it booted up. We had a little technical problem here from the war room. I want to now have Denver. I want you to see the hysteria, because this is what your Republican leaders are being kowtowed to. They are buying into this narrative, and they will not raise their voices. This is an outrage for the nation. Let's play Denver. Can we play Stephanie Rule and Mika this morning on the MSNBC?
We must start this morning with the new threat facing our nation's capital, and an apparent plot by a militia group also known as a domestic terrorist group, once again planning to storm the U.S. Capitol. It comes almost 2 months to the day after right-wing conspiracy groups led the January insurrection. Why today? Because apparently QAnon says today is the day Donald Trump somehow gets reinstalled as president, calling it the, quote, true inaugural. Even if this idea is absolutely ridiculous, which it is, officials are taking the threat very seriously, adding to security measures at the Capitol. And House Democrats have actually canceled today's legislative session out of abundance of caution to let their members get out of town. We should mention that the Senate is still coming in.
Capitol Police put out a statement yesterday saying the department is aware of and prepared for any potential threats. House lawmakers scrapped plans to be in session today due to the threat. The security detail assigned to the lawmakers who served as impeachment managers has also been extended through the week. The Senate still plans to be in session today. This new warning comes as the acting chief of the U.S. Capitol Police told lawmakers yesterday that threats against members of Congress have dramatically increased.
What we'd like to do is just get that information. If that's accurate, if there's an actual threat from organized domestic terror groups to blow up the Capitol on really the anniversary, March was the traditional inauguration day up until I think the FDR administration during the Great Depression when it was changed because of, you needed to do it quick. You didn't need the transportation you needed in the days before cars, planes, trains, all of that. Okay, Raheem, I want to go back to that. You see the continued drumbeat as you start this morning, and to justify why the House is scattered, right? They've taken off. The leadership over there has shut the business of the House down, and they're claiming because they're afraid that domestic terror groups have a plan to blow up the Capitol and to, I guess, reinstall Donald Trump in some sort of inauguration. It's very muddled, and the reason is they haven't come forward and shown anybody anything. They haven't shown the receipts. They're supposed to be data, evidence, and science-based. If they've got the data, if they've got the evidence, they've got the science, bring it forward. Reasonable people can agree that those types of things can't happen, but they got to bring it forward. All this is now a psychological warfare. Mr. Raheem Kassam.
Right. Well, it's muddled because primarily I suspect the intelligence isn't really there. What I suspect is happening is they're piecing together small bits of information in order to weave a grander narrative that just doesn't exist. As you can see, there have been more reporters out here this morning than there have been anyone else. There have been more joggers out here this morning than there's anything else. There have been more construction people out here this morning than there's been anything else. And look, on the off chance that something happens or somebody tries to do something, of course it should be roundly condemned, and we all get that. I think the nation speaks united with that voice that nobody wants to see this building attacked. But the rationale for this isn't clear. The rationale for having these people here isn't clear. And I think it's becoming very clear to most people, even of the political left right now. Remember, Capitol Hill is mostly a left-dominated residential neighborhood. And even those people now are getting mighty ticked off with the fact that their lives are being fundamentally altered. Their, Capitol is being shut down. And all of this is taking place under the guise of safety and security. Again, what safety and security? Biden donor, acting Capitol Hill police chief Yogananda Pittman won't seem to tell us, won't go up in front of the cameras, won't hold an open press conference. If there was genuinely a threat here, Steve, remember, they would have evacuated all of these neighborhoods. They would have evacuated the office buildings here to my left. They would have evacuated the residential buildings half a block in front of me here. But none of that has happened, and that tells you something very serious. Why is the Capitol Hill police chief not standing where I am standing in front of reporters and taking questions?
Yeah, this is political theater, and it's really theater of the absurd. Raheem, look forward to getting you back over here into the war room. Raheem up live on Capitol Hill, this absolute travesty. And here's what makes it a particular travesty. I think it was 155 years ago this morning, people would be starting to gather at really where Raheem is and actually going past where the fencing is to go up to the Capitol. 155 years ago today, 4 March of 1865, was when Abraham Lincoln gave, I believe people, it's a consensus, the greatest speech in American political history. His second inaugural address was given from the east side, right where Raheem Kassam, who normally could walk up there, but you can't now because of the fencing. So 155 years ago today, one of the greatest days in American political history, and to bind the nation's wounds. And today, we have the political theater, the theater of the absurd. We need to see the receipts. We need to see the evidence. If you've got a case, make it. Right now, you've got 5 people. Of all of those people that showed up to riot of the million that came, you got 5 that are associated with any group whatsoever. So it's time now for the Republicans to force this information out. We shouldn't be sitting here every day with no information about this. The nation to see this. We're going to return in a second. The fight is on across the country, whether it's about election law, amnesty, all of it. Back in the war room in a minute.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Arguments over Arizona voting restrictions, which make it a crime for anyone other than a family member or caregiver to turn in another person's early ballot, and another that requires any ballot cast in the wrong precinct to be discarded, even if the person was eligible to vote. Meanwhile, over in Georgia, Republican lawmakers are pushing a new law that would require a photo ID for absentee voting, limit the amount of time voters have to request an absentee ballot, restrict where ballot drop boxes could be located and when they could be accessed, and limit early voting hours on weekends. And so
MSNBC being 3 days catching up to the war room. We had all that for you on Monday. And listen, the fight is back. Let me give you the 4 verticals. You know, we go from the sublime to the ridiculous, but we got to sometimes get down into the muck of just power politics, right? We give you the geopolitics, we give you the finance, we give you the global capital markets. We also talk about all the big movements throughout the world, signal, not noise. But now it is obviously very focused. You have to focus on these 4 verticals. One, the financing part of it, that's the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package they're going to do to buy everybody off. By the way, the American people need the cash because this thing's been mishandled by the Biden administration, needs to get the cash now, right? We've always said you need that cash, and the bridging function, not permanently. You've got the elections on H.R. 1, which we're going to get to in a second with Michael Patrick Leahy in Georgia. And you've seen Mika and these people now in full meltdown with the Georgia House just passed. Also what's going on in Arizona. And tonight we're going to have a special report on the forensic audit in Arizona. Also the equality bill, this radical bill that would destroy religious liberty in this country and also destroy women's sports and give young women of Hispanic and African American the ticket out they've got to play for a Division I school through a scholarship. Now have to compete. Will have to compete with young men. In the amnesty bill, this radical amnesty bill. Good news of this, Politico reports this morning, guess what? It's not coming. It's not coming as of now. It's going to be delayed a couple of months, and that is because, guess what? Moderate Democrats in the swing districts the Democrats don't have the votes. They don't have the votes because you and the audience out there. We're going to have Rosemary Jenks later. One thing, Raheem is now back in studio. And Raheem, I've got to tell you, every day we pound this, and you and I are up early in the morning plotting this thing. We kind of blew it, had a technical issue in our cold open and kind of blew it. But you're the ones that turned me on to this with the MyPillow. And I got to tell you, Mike Lindell and the company, everybody out there, Mike Lindell is a warrior. That company is a company of warriors, right? They got major manufacturing here in the United States. We're honored to be now part of the MyPillow family. MyPillow.com, put in War Room. We've got a special deal for you. We get up to 66% off of tons of products. I think they have 110, 120 products out there right now. Tons of products, but big discounts on everything. And you've got we got a special on the pillow that Raheem swears by. The queen size premium MyPillow, now $29.98. Normally that's a $40 discount, $69.98. But we need you to go and hit MyPillow.com for War Room or call 800-873-1062. Make sure you put in the promo code War Room. Raheem, great report from the Capitol. We'll get Michael Patrick Leahy in a second. Tell us, this is outrageous what's going on, correct?
I just want to make clear, I'm not wearing sunglasses. These are my transitions lenses. So I'm currently transitioning back to... I'm not
just your eyes. Just your eyes are transitioning.
I'm not just the glasses. I'm not wearing sunglasses in I
don't want to give Madeline Pell something else.
Not a cool dude like that. It's bizarre out there. Firstly, it's very cold out there. But secondly, just walking down that Capitol, look, I got to be honest with people. This is one of the coolest places on earth, right? It always has been. People, they take wedding pictures out there and they like to jog up those steps.
It's stunningly beautiful.
It's beautiful. They picnic on the grounds. They have the Christmas tree lighting there. It's just something really beautiful and amazing, despite the people within, despite the policies that come from inside that building. The building itself and the grounds are something really special, and it rocks me to my core to watch it like that, not least because I'm not from here, right? I looked at America growing up feeling like, wow, you can say what you want and believe what you want and you're left alone in
freedom.
America.
It's called freedom.
Right. Something that most countries do not have. Oh, everyone has a little bit here and there, whatever the government tells you your freedoms are. But America was always different. And as somebody from the outside, and I can tell you from people, I talk to people across the world, people are looking in going, this is the end.
CNN is reporting, correct me if I'm wrong, CNN is reporting that of all of the individuals, I think they have 800 they're reviewing. There's 55 FBI offices doing investigations. I think 150 people, 140 people have actually been died. 5 people are associated with groups, and those groups would be the Oath Keepers or Proud Boys, which, you tell me, you've seen the Proud Boys out there. It looks like a beer drinking organization. But my point is only 5 are associated. That's CNN's report this morning. Only 5. And there's some other analysis out there that's saying, but this shows you how a mass group of people can get radicalized. But my point is only 5. How do they shut down the Capitol? How do they send everybody home? And how do they say, it's 4 March, it refers back to the 19th century, and QAnon's going to come in and bring Donald Trump from Mar-a-Lago, I guess, and install him on an inauguration. I mean, that is theater of the absurd. If that's the case, that case has to be coming, and the Republicans should demand it. I just don't see any voices up there hammering on this. Why are they just sitting there and rolling over on this? Because the psychological warfare builds and builds and builds, and this is the way people get demoralized.
So I think it's intentional what they're doing here by saying, most people were not involved in these other groups. What they're trying to do now is say, look, ordinary Trump supporters are domestic terrorists.
Yep.
That's the narrative that they're weaving here. And think about it.
But today they're saying it's shut down because of domestic terror groups, militias.
Right.
That's why they got to come forward. The facts don't back that up. They got to come forward. I know how they're trying to spin it. They got to come forward today and show us the receipts.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The narrative. It doesn't just keep shifting; it's wildly flipping every single day to meet whatever narrative of the day the CNN or the authorities want to have happen. But the idea, I mean, look, I've worked in the field of anti-extremism, counter-terrorism, counter-radicalization for all of my adult life, and I got to tell you, it doesn't take 2 months of talking about an election to radicalize people. Radicalization is a long process. It's a process that usually requires somebody actually, to basically have their hand held throughout the process, whether it's by Anwar al-Awlaki or any of these al-Mujahiroon groups or all this that we've seen in the past. And it doesn't lead to people just taking action and jumping through. What we saw on January the 6th was a compartmentalized form of mass hysteria. Led, remember, by these people and these groups and these Jaden X's and all these guys who were pushing people in and saying, come on, you're welcome. Then, remember, you had the police pulling the barricades away. You had a side door being opened. And the pictures of ordinary people, those who weren't there to do that, there were no doubt they were
staying
there
inside the ropes, just wandering around.
Lining up inside the ropes, taking pictures. What coup in history?
By the way, not one gun, not one weapon has been found of anybody that was there. They won't talk about that. We don't know how the police officer died.
And where's the guy who put the pipe bombs?
This is outrageous. The Republicans let the FBI director off the hook. Okay, let's go to Michael Patrick Leahy. Huge breaking story on the Georgia Star. Michael runs all these papers, all these websites. Michael, here's the thing. It's Republican officials down there. Your report's explosive. Tell us what you found. And why is nobody down in Georgia care? No, why are no elected officials being held accountable for this?
Well, this is a breaking story at the Georgia Star News, georgiastarnews.com, by our own Tiffany Morgan down there in Georgia. But we've been tracking this for months. And here's the headline. 4 months after the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election, state and county officials in Georgia have failed to produce chain of custody documents for an estimated 404,000 vote-by-mail absentee ballots deposited in drop boxes and subsequently delivered to county registrars for counting. Now, there were 5 million votes cast in Georgia on November 3rd. 1.3 million of those were absentee vote-by-mail. Of those 1.3, according to a poll from John McLaughlin, 700,000 were cast via regular mail, and 600,000 were put in these 300 drop boxes scattered around the state, many of them funded by the Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan funded Center for Technology and Civic Life. The state election board in Georgia in July issued an emergency election code rule, which said, A, we can have drop boxes. By the way, the state legislature has not authorized drop boxes. And B, if you have drop boxes, you got to fill out what's called a ballot transfer form. Every county, there are 159 counties in Georgia. And so if you had a drop box you would come every day, like 40 days before the election. You'd have a team of 2. They'd come, they'd empty the drop box, they'd sign their names and say, well, we got 50 ballots. And they were supposed to immediately transport them to the local county registrar within like an hour. And so we've tracked all this. So the Secretary of State there, Brad Raffensperger, has said, well, I'm not going to track all those absentee ballot transfer forms. That's not my job. Well, it probably is. But he said, if you want to do that, you got to talk to all 159 counties. So at the Georgia Star News, we have sent an open records request to all 159 counties in Georgia to see, well, can you document those 600,000 vote by mail absentee ballots deposited in drop boxes?
Okay,
do you have the chance?
We've got. I'm going to hold you over. We got to bounce. But I thought they came out. I thought the registrar or something came out and said they were going to have that all wrapped up by 5 January, the day before the president's inauguration. Just yes or no before we go to break. Didn't they come back and say they were going to actually verify?
Each county said something like that, and only about 56 of the 159 counties actually provided data.
Okay, we're in. Hold on. Michael Patrick Leahy from the Georgia Star, one of the great investigative apparatuses out there. We're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to come back. Also got Rosemary Jenks on this mini victory on the amnesty bill. All next. War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, so Michael Patrick Leahy, you're doing all the reporting at the Georgia Star, and I know you get up on the John Frederick Radio Network, and now we have a station down in Atlanta. But why they just passed these 7, this big House bill? Mika Brzezinski's all over them. The mainstream media is now getting on to what's happening down there, although some people on the right are saying it's not enough. But why is there not more down there about just absolutely ascertaining the chain of custody and what happened on the vote on November 3rd? Why are Republican officials in the House, in the Senate, forcing, the governor and the male model, that's the lieutenant governor, why are they not forcing some action on this to go and abide by the law of what has to be reviewed, has to be ascertained, has to be certified? Why is that not happening?
I think there is a lot of activity there in the state legislature to do just that. The chairman of the Committee on Election Integrity in the House, Barry Fleming, has aggressively pursued legislation that passed the House that would, in effect, do a lot of that. So I do think there are efforts there, but I think you're also right. There's an entire lack of curiosity about the enforcement of the actual rules established by the State Election Board by the Secretary of State Raffensperger, which is, just baffling. He is the one who really ought to be providing the ballot transfer.
The lack of curiosity is very simple. They don't want to get to the results. Look, all the legislation you pass, the reason we lost, don't believe Mitch McConnell's spin and lies. The reason we lost, deplorables didn't show up because they said, hey, you can't guarantee. You still got the Stacey Abrams consent. You can't show me this is going to be a fair election. Why should I walk neighborhoods? Why should I knock on doors? Why should I give money? Why should I go to rallies? Why should I go vote? You got to get to the bottom of November 3rd. This is out there. It's law. It's the regulations. It should be done. I love the fact they're passing new legislation, but I don't care right now about the new legislation until you tell me what happened on November 3rd. Why is that not some firestorm in the Georgia State Capitol, sir?
I think one of the reasons is because most of the media, except for the Georgia Star News and the John Fredericks Radio Network, in Georgia is left-wing and aligned with the interests of the Democratic Party. That's what it seems like to me. I think the first step that could be taken, that should be taken, is force Fulton County in the Atlanta area, force them to produce these ballot transfer forms and then analyze them. We did get some from Cobb County, and when we analyzed those, 89,000 of these 600,000 votes across the state, 89,000 were cast in drop boxes in Cobb County. Guess what? 78% of them, when we looked at them, were not immediately transported from the drop boxes to the registrars.
Yep.
What happened to them?
Okay, Michael, we got to bounce. How do people get to the Georgia Star? How do they follow this? We followed this now with you for a couple of months. How do they follow this so we can get people fired up down there? How do they get to you?
GeorgiaStarNews.com. GeorgiaStarNews.com. It's one of 6 state-based news sites that are part of the Star News Network. Of course, our flagship is the Tennessee Star, which I founded here 4 years ago in Nashville.
Do you have social media that people can follow you during the day?
We do. All of our sites have social media, and then, of course, I'm on Twitter at Michael P. Leahy. Leahy. And then, of course, adding CloutHub and Parler and all those, and Rumble and all those great new social media options.
You're an American patriot. Everybody in the audience to go check out this article today. We'll have it up in the live stream, but I want you to go check out the sites. Michael Patrick Leahy, thank you very much. True patriot.
Great to meet you, Steve.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now I want to pivot to another patriot and really stalwart of saving this republic. That would be Rosemary Jenks from Numbers USA. Anything you want to know about on the amnesty side, you got CIS, you got Numbers USA, you can get all your analysis and also how you get active in stopping this. Look, I think it was Politico today reported that she doesn't have the votes. They're not moving forward with amnesty as quickly as they thought, this amnesty bill, because they don't have the votes in the Democratic Party. And quite frankly, and we're broadcast live, I think, in Virginia 7 and Virginia 2, they understand if they voted for that amnesty bill, it would be the end of their political career. So she doesn't have these Democrats in these swing districts, at least, and probably more right now. Rosemary Jenks, this is, I would call, a mini victory. Victory begets victory. Isn't this a start? Doesn't this give us some traction?
It is absolutely good news that there are some number of Democrats in the House who realize that in the middle of a border surge and in the middle of a pandemic is not the time to pass mass amnesty and double legal immigration. That is great news. The bad news, though, is that they are still planning to move forward with votes on 2 smaller amnesties in 2 weeks. That's the American Dream and Promise Act, introduced by Lucille Roybal Allard, which would amnesty about 3 million Dreamers plus people with temporary protected status. And then also the Farm Workforce Modernization Act by Zoe Lofgren, which would give amnesty to about 1.2 million farm workers plus their spouses and children. But in the initial stages, it would just put them into indentured servitude with a green card as a reward at the end. So 2 really bad bills. And we'll see if these same number of Democrats still realize that passing a smaller amnesty is just as bad in the middle of a border surge and a pandemic as passing a bigger amnesty.
The one thing we do know, though, and this is for the audience looking downrange, is that if they're saying they're going to delay it till they come back in April and maybe to late April, May, as Steve Cortez has said, that is when the border is going to explode. There's a crisis building on the border right now because of Joe Biden's basic invitation to come up. I'd like you to walk through that, to walk people through why this is building ahead of steam in April and May when it starts to warm up, because they've had bitter cold winters in Texas and down in New Mexico and other places. When it starts to warm up, April and May is going to be when you talk about this crisis at the border, Rosemary.
Well, first of all, I just have to say, Steve, that it is truly amazing to see the pictures of these people coming up from Central America and Mexico with T-shirts that say, "Biden, please let us in." They're all wearing these T-shirts. It is just astonishing. It is ever so clear that this messaging from Biden started during the campaign and has continued, and he sees nothing wrong with, broadcasting an invitation to the world to just come on in, and he's getting exactly what he asked for. And you're absolutely right. It is going to just continue to grow. There is nothing that this administration is doing that is sending any kind of message to make it stop. And as long as Congress continues talking about amnesty, it will continue and continue to grow. We're already seeing projections within the administration that there will be 117,000 unaccompanied alien children come in across the border this year. They have no idea what they're going to do with those people, but I guarantee you they're going to be released into the United States, whether or not they have COVID. And, we're going to have increased gang problems. We're going to have increased homelessness problems, all of the things that come with importing poverty, basically. And they're all going to have to compete with American workers for jobs that don't exist anymore.
Hey, didn't National Pulse break the story about 1 out of 20 coming up? Was it National Pulse?
Yeah.
Talk about that real quickly. But you broke the story. 1 out of 20 coming across right now are infected with COVID.
Yeah, that's right.
CCP virus.
So we were looking at this NBC report about who was coming over, and about 10 out of 12 paragraphs into this report, they let slip that 6%.
The buried lead.
Yeah, that 6% of people who are being processed, and then sent on into the United States were actually testing positive. So there's 1 in 20 people down there at the border, and they actually named where they were being sent to as well, being put on coaches and being sent to parts of Texas, being sent to parts of New Jersey, parts of Maryland, and that's people testing positive. And they asked, I believe they interviewed the refugees, asylum seekers, whatever they call them themselves, and said, hey, what are you doing to make sure that this, you're not spreading the virus around? Said, we're washing our hands and wearing masks and things like that. I mean, it's extraordinary.
The reason this is a tragedy, Rosemary, I want to go back to the last thing you said at the close, is that the burden of this is going to come on working class Hispanics families and working class African Americans with the flood of this cheap labor, is it not? And this is one of the reasons we keep saying this is why Donald Trump had such a historic turnaround and so many victories down in the Rio Grande Valley in those hard-scrabbled, principally Hispanic, blue-collar districts. That a couple he won and others he lost by 60%. This time lost by 5%. The outpouring for the security measures and the job focus, the economic nationalism, populism, the Hispanic families are responding to, and this is just going to eviscerate them. Is it not, Rosemary Jenks?
Absolutely is. And the other part of that, when you go back to the COVID data, Hispanics and blacks are much more likely to have severe consequences from COVID. The folks coming in across the border are going to those communities. They're going to be in those communities spreading COVID. So it's a double whammy on those communities and on all working class poor Americans.
So, Rosemary, how can people, our audience is an activist audience, they want to know how to get engaged. We know we got to go to Numbers USA. Every day you should just be checking it for updates. But how is there any organized effort in opposition to really get out there, flood the zone with media? Is the RNC or McCarthy showing any leadership whatsoever on these issues?
The Republican Study Committee in the House is actually doing a lot of great work on these issues. They've been tweeting and sending out reports. So they've been great. I haven't seen a lot of other organized efforts. This is something that the media obviously doesn't want to cover. They're trying to hide all of this to protect the Biden administration. It's difficult to break through, but what we really need to break through is Congress. We need people contacting their members of Congress and telling them no amnesty. We're in the middle of a border surge. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Fix those things. And then come talk to us about your future policies. And, we hope that your audience will go to numbersusa.com and sign up and help you to contact your members of Congress, because that is what it's going to come down to. We can stop this, but we have to put pressure on Congress. And every one of those members of Congress who votes for any of these amnesties needs to know that they are directly responsible for every little girl who's raped on the way to the border, for every person who's left in the desert to die by the cartels. They're responsible. This is a human tragedy. It's a tragedy for American workers. It's a tragedy for our country, and they can stop it.
Rosemary Jenks, how do people follow you? What are your coordinates on social media so they can follow you during the day?
We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Parler, at Numbers USA.
Rosemary Jenks, thank you. True patriot. Raheem, what we're going to do, CIS committed to this. I know we can get Rosemary committed to this. What we're going to do for these other bills, we're going to start getting the same briefings they're going to give to Capitol Hill. I want to get in here and start giving to the war room, post them up in the live chat, make sure that our people get all the information that Congress has. We want our audience to have. This is another big one, and it's going to have to be organized out of the war room, right? We're fine. We've done this before, so it's going to be organized. And remember, this is a tragedy. We're certainly not demonizing the people from Central America. They're acting rationally to incentives that this tragedy has to be dealt with in Central America. I've said this for years, and you're putting the burden on the people that can least afford it. You're putting the burden on working class Hispanics and African American families. We're going to actually have Kim Klacik in today to be our co-host for the entire evening show. And we're going to talk about Peter Navarro. We're going to talk about Raheem. You'll be here too. We're going to talk about economic populism, economic nationalism, how it is really the way forward for the African American, particularly the inner city communities like Baltimore. My mom's a native of Baltimore, loves the city, and Kim ran for Congress there. She's a fighter. We're going to talk all about it. Mr. Raheem Kassam.
I mean, more in. I mean, I agree with you in terms of the irrational behavior, but really, I mean, the incentivization of all of this is what's behind it. You've got to go even deeper than just the Biden regime itself. Look at the industries that are behind this.
The corporations outrageous. You have driven a new narrative, and that is even the mainstream media is getting on him for not doing the press. We're going to talk about that when we came back. When Raheem Kassam and the National Pulse started, will they finish it? Next in the War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Thank you. And I'm happy to take questions if that's what I'm supposed to do, Nance, whatever you want me to do.
Okay, this is people last night did it was funny. It's not funny. This is serious. That's the commander-in-chief, right? Although I think he's there illegitimately and illegally, and we can prove that. I don't care what the mainstream media says, but he's got the office. He's in. He's got the nuclear codes. You've been hammering on this. You've done the best work with McCormick. We've had him on a couple of times. You've done podcasts with him. The author of Biden Unauthorized. To saw him up close and personal. Why are they, and why is the mainstream media, now CNN and MSNBC are on your, is it day 43?
43 days, 3 hours, 51 minutes.
You've started this over at National Pulse to say this is unacceptable. He hasn't had an unaccompanied, it really hasn't had a press conference, but he hasn't had anything without a handler. Last night, he's sitting there clearly not looking like he's with the program. He says, I'll take questions. I'm supposed to take questions. Boom. Hard stop. And here's the arrogance. They don't come and explain anything about it. What is going on?
So just for the audio audience especially, what you saw there was Joe Biden taking part in a Democrat Zoom call yesterday, broadcast, and at the end of it, he offers to take questions. So he's offering the people who are on the call, reporters, to answer their questions. I don't know who makes this call, but somebody in that moment made the call.
Ron Klain.
They just cold shut the stream down.
Shut it down.
He's not taking questions. Cut it off.
Because he can't take questions.
Well, look, I mean, there are serious questions to be asked of elder abuse
Did they come out and say anything? Did they come out and give any justification for that?
No. But there are more serious questions to be asked about whether, as you say, whether or not Joe Biden is actually competent to string a fully formulated sentence and thought together. And I don't say that in a funny way at all. I'm deeply concerned.
This is not funny.
That the commander-in-chief is non-compos mentis.
This is not
at this point in time. And I don't mean a little bit.
Yep.
If they're not allowing him to take a single question after a public event that's publicly streamed, he's marching off every time we see him now. Immediately after the event, he marches directly, exit stage right.
He gets the hook.
And Kamala is marching right up behind him so that he can't stop moving.
Yep.
Right? Just keep going. Keep walking, Joe. Keep walking, Joe. Go on the White House. This is for all the sleuths out there. Go on the White House Flickr account. Just have a little scroll of all these beautiful pictures they take. Because I do every day. And I've noticed a theme here. He's getting pictures taken of him walking the residents to the Oval every day.
Yep.
Now, you understand that that's done a couple of times. It's done every so often. They want pictures, of course. But it's done almost every day as a way of making a point. Like, here he is, he's going, and he's got a little brown satchel in his hand, he's got his little papers in his hand, and they snap him walking across. Somebody is telling these photographers, every day, hey, please go out there and be ready, take a picture of him. Yes. It's complete theater, total theater.
To show that he's active, and he's doing homework, he's got his papers, all that.
Right, but then go into the detail. Go into the detail of when he gets the PDB, Who's getting the PDB? The other day there wasn't even a Marine outside the Oval Office when he was supposedly getting the PDB, and then they said, the Marine was getting the COVID test or whatever. We didn't have time to replace it with another. None of it makes any sense whatsoever. Now, look, I noticed a lot of the conservative media, without crediting or linking back to the National Pulse, have now started to pick up on this narrative. But what's more important is the left media is now picking up on this narrative because they are having to defend actions that under the previous administration they would have been frothing at the mouth about.
Well, you can't defend particularly the press conference. And it's going to be a fiasco when he's up there. Okay, look, you see the energy that comes out of here every day. How do we get that? With our War Room Defense Pack. Now, what is that? Go to warroomdefense.com. That's all one word, spelled the American way, not the British way, as Raheem Kassam tells me yesterday. It's the way Raheem and I stay on top of things. You've got we've procured 1 million bottles of the vitamin D3 and also 1 million bottles of the zinc. It's all for free. You've got to pay shipping and handling, but you'll work that out when you go to the site. There's going to be a lot more up there. You're a patriot warrior. We understand that. We need you to be a health warrior. This is not going to get turned around immediately. We're in it for the long haul. So every day we need your immune system up to the absolute top. You need to go to warroomdefense.com, get your free bottles of vitamin D3 and zinc. That's as a starter. We're going to have a lot more up there to talk to you about as time goes on, but that's the War Room Defense Pack. We need you on top of that. Raheem.
And you'll be pleased to know that I think it may be halal as well because it's not pig gelatin.
That you would know that, I wouldn't. But I got to tell you, what I do like is the packaging is the helmet of the Spartans, right? The 300 Spartans. So it's it gets your immune system up and going in connection with the guys.
And by the way, there's no funny chemicals or anything in here.
No. It's American source. This is all American source, and this is American manufactured, right? We take the Rosemary Gibson stuff seriously. So once you go to the day, warroomdefense.com. Raheem, in the second hour, we've got Phil Klein coming back talking about the economics of this all, and also Darren Beatty's got an amazing piece up on the Revolver about what we're really. If you want, here's the thing I think is so frustrating, people. You look at these state legislators, look at Congress. Where are the fighters? Right? We had Boebert yesterday from Colorado. We're trying to get some other ones on here starting next week. Where are the fighters? We need people that fight. We need people that sit there and say, hey, this is wrong. You need to see the evidence. You need to sit there and going TV, getting up in their grill, being relentless about it, say, hey, we need to see why the Capitol is shut down, right? We need to see why you want to put forward these radical amnesty programs. Why do you want to shut down women's sports, right? Why do you want to take away religious liberty? We need fighters, and we need people. That's what I love about the National Pulse. Natalie Winters, the young team you've got over there, every day you guys are hammering it.
You know what I don't understand, and actually I'm coming to understand this in real time right now. Must be the zinc. The lack of anybody there, the lack of Republicans pushing, to tear down this wall and to take action. Again, I know there'll be Republican staffers watching this going, we're working on papers and press conferences. Sure, but that's the grind. That's your job, right? Leadership is something special. Leadership takes ingenuity. Leadership takes risks. And if you don't want to lead, then you don't take action. And so what it's telling me is there's no will to lead from within the Republican Party right now. There is not somebody out there willing to stand up in the very same place I did this morning, hold a press conference out there, and have your tear down this wall moment. It's time to lead.
You're in the war room. That means you're in the arena. Short commercial break. We'll return with the entire team in just a moment.